This is the Canon FD 135mm 2.8 lens. And I bought this lens a couple of months ago and it is currently one of my favorite lenses. It's small, it's sharp, it's light, and for a 30-year-old lens, it's pretty beastly. Also, when I bought this lens, I also got a 200mm 2.8, which is chunkier and larger, but it's still actually reasonably good. It's not as sharp as the 135, it's not quite as good flare resistance, but it's still pretty good. And it has that big, lovely glass right there. But recently I decided to step up the game a little bit and pick up this, the 300mm f4L Canon FD lens. When I bought this lens, I had assumed that it would be kind of like the 200 2.8. It would be maybe a bit longer and a bit fatter, but not too much because it was only an f4 compared to 2.8. I was wrong. This thing is an absolute, like, just chode massive thing in comparison to the 200 2.8. This thing is a beast of a lens. It weighs about 1 kilogram. I'm actually getting a sore arm from holding it up like this, and it's absolutely immaculate, this particular example. I ordered from Japan on eBay. I found a guy selling it for €200, which is a reasonable price for it. And for a 30-year-old lens, it's really, really nice. It does have a funky smell though. There's a funny smell off it. It smells like kind of like moldy wood. And it actually smells like exactly like my grandparents' farm. So they had an old house on the farm that is currently used for like feed storage and stuff. And this smells exactly like that old house, like rotteny wood, animal feed. Not sure why. It's clearly been stored in like an attic or somewhere for like 20 years. It's all manual, of course, because it's a SLR lens from the film days. So we've got our manual aperture ring, and then we've got our focusing ring here, which is quite large. And the focusing ring is butter smooth. Like, you can adjust this with like one flick of your thumb. So it's super easy to adjust if you're holding it like this. You can just sort of, on top we've got our lens cap, which is all metal, by the way, you know, nice metal lens cap. And it's like a friction fit. I'm not sure what this is called, but it's not the ones where you squeeze in the little tabs and they lock into the threads on the lens. It fits over the top of the lens and just sort of slides off. And then we also have a nice integrated lens hood. Now, one last thing this lens has actually, and I wasn't aware of it, is drop-in filters. So you can press this little button here on it and pop the filter out. Now this is the clear glass one, it's called the 1X, and it turns out this is actually required for the lens to function correctly, so you don't want to just take it out. You need to leave it in. But there are other filters. I believe there's a red filter, a blue filter, and a ND4 available, but they're supposed to be like just incredibly rare and hard to find. If I come across one, I might pick one up, but I don't think so. And then finally, as for features on the lens, we've got our lens collar, which is quite nice. You just twist the little knob here on the side and you can rotate the lens to mount your camera vertically. And you can also just take it off completely by pulling it out and the collar just comes off. And that's the bare lens then. So the only question now is, how good is this 1988 L lens? Well, to find out, we're going to head out to the Phoenix Park and film the deer.
Turns to rust, the fire it burns to dust. We love until it hurts too much. We let our love run free. Build your fences high and hope we let it fly. Learn until the day we die, so let your love run free.
So, we're back from filming the deer 2 weeks ago because I got a really bad bout of flu last weekend, and you know, life stuff gets in the way. But we're back, and the question is, was this lens any good? Short answer, Yes, really quite good. Long answer, there is some downsides to using this lens. So first downside, always manual focus. Now for video, that's fine, but for pictures, that can be a bit of an issue. And when we get into looking at some pictures, you'll see what I mean. Second issue with this lens, no ND filter thread, which is a really big issue for video geeks, because I normally use a variable ND filter. In fact, I actually have one on the shelf here. So I use this, it's a Tiffin ND filter, it's the variable ND. And you can see it's going dark and up. So I use this for shooting video all the time, and it's a really, really handy filter in bright situations. I can't put that on this lens, even with stepping rings, because there's no threads. And I think there is a thread in there that holds in this front element that you can use, but it's like a 78.2 millimeter. It's some weird measurement that no one uses, because you're supposed to buy the inline filters that go in the back of the lens, the drop-in ones. But unfortunately, they're super rare. Now there is a way around this, which I'm currently looking into, because I do want to use this for more long-range video, because it's really cool. You can buy an adapter for the Sony mirrorless cameras that allow you to put an ND filter into the adapter, or there's a couple of adapters out there that have variable ND filters built into them, which you can put behind the lens, which I think will be awesome. I'm looking into buying one of those at the moment. But overall, I really actually enjoyed using that lens out for a few hours of shooting, handheld. As you've seen by the video, it produces nice video. So let's now take a look at some pictures in Lightroom and see how they turned out. Okay, so taking a quick look at two pictures. The one on the left here is my 300mm lens, and the one on the right is actually my Sony 24-105G lens, which is a zoom lens. And if we zoom in on both of these, they're both very sharp. The Sony lens here is nice and sharp. You can see nice and fine detail around the hair. But the 300mm lens, when manually focused correctly, actually is surprisingly sharp. I'm actually kind of amazed. It's about the same for a lens which is 20 years old. You'll obviously see there's a bit of a problem with some contrasting. Both of these shots were backlit, and I deliberately set them up so that they both flare pretty badly, because the 300mm FD lens is not very good at dealing with the flare. While the Sony lenses with its modern coatings clearly is far superior. Because these are RAW files, we can actually do a bit of adjustment. So we're actually just going to do auto tone control in Lightroom. And there we go. Now that's actually pretty good looking. So let's put auto on both of them. You'd hardly tell that this was shot with a 20-year-old lens. Or is it older? That's a 30-year-old lens actually. And you'd hardly tell the difference. There is a little bit of color fringing actually, I've just realized, on this lens. So yeah, you can see some like fairly severe aberration, while the Sony lens has zero aberration at all. You're getting a lot of aberration on the water droplets, the hair itself, so the color is a little bit funky in comparison. But overall, it's pretty good. Let's see if we can do anything with that aberration. Let's go into develop here. Let's actually just select a very careful segment here. There we go, that helped get rid of some of the aberration. Let's go back to our comparison. So overall, the 300mm lens is actually pretty damn good for a 30-year-old lens for €200 off eBay, shipped from Japan. That is it. I would actually quite recommend this lens if you're looking for a cheap telephoto and you can't afford anything better. I'd definitely take a look at it. But that is it for this video, and I'll see you next time.